Hey Lori and everybody, happy Tutorial Thursday. Hope everyone is doing well wherever you are out there this Thursday afternoon lunchtime crafting stream. Welcome to the Beading Dream stream. Today we are going to be doing this. This is our triple chain necklace. So this is one take on inserting kind of a linear section of beads into a piece of chain, and there's a couple of different ways you can do that, and all of them are valid. They just give different effects. So probably the most old kind of standard way is if anybody had an add a pearl necklace when they were a kid, those pearls were actually put on the middle of that chain with thread. So literally you go through the pearls, you go through the chain, you go back through the pearls, you tie off, you string off the rest of your pearls, then go back through the chain on the other side, go back through the pearl, knot it off. So those are actually done with typically a silk thread. Then you've got wire wrapping, and that's similar to a couple of tutorials that we've had, like the crystal smile necklace, trapeze earrings. Okay, so that's a really easy way to insert kind of a linear section of beads into a piece of chain. The facility that comes with using wire to do that is you actually have the option to make the piece a straight bar, because the wire of course has more body than a thread would, so it could be a straight bar, or you can curve it into what we tend to call a smile shape. And then the third option is what we're going to be doing today, which is actually using our stringing cables. This is the same stringing cable that we would be using on just a basic strung necklace or bracelet, and the stringing cable has the benefit of giving you a nice easy drape like the thread would, that you don't really have to think about, but it's a little easier to manage than the thread. Goodness gracious, that wasn't supposed to trip me up, but apparently it did. Yeah, it's a little easier to manage than the thread, and also it's stronger. The stringing cable is always going to be stronger for its size than any kind of fiber would be. So let's talk tools and supplies for this afternoon's tutorial. We are going to need beads, of course, handily. I have a partial strand of tourmaline beads left over from last night's tutorial, so that's what I'm going to use for this afternoon's tutorial. I swear, I can't get the light right lately. Like, now it looks too dark. But anyway, tourmaline beads, that's what I'm using. These are 3mm tourmaline beads. You can really use any size beads. If you want to take a gander at my prototype necklace, I use much larger beads than 3mm, so really any size beads, or any combination of any size of beads, because obviously all the beads on this necklace are not the same size, will work. Which makes this a really good stash buster project. So if you have, random leftover beads, this is a really good way to just use them up, because you don't need very many, and you can decide how many beads you're going to use on this project. It looks best when you've got at least 1 inch of beads on each strand, but you don't need much more than that. So it's a really good project for, say strands that you've cut, that you only have part left of, or just random stuff from the bottom of your bead box. So you need at least 3 inches of beads. You can use more if you want. Again, 3mm tourmaline is what I'm going to be using for my tutorial today. You're going to need some chain. I'm using a slightly lighter chain than I used on my prototype, so this is just a little base metal curved chain. It's like a 4mm curved chain. I think it's going to work well with my tourmalines. You're going to need a clasp. Now, you don't necessarily need a 3-strand clasp for that. This project, I did use a 3-strand clasp on my prototype. And by 3-strand clasp, I mean a clasp that literally has 3 separate loops into which you can attach your chains. But for this one, because it's a little bit smaller, most of my 3-strand clasps that I have in stock are a little bit clunky, so I didn't think that was a good choice. I'm just going to use this little Vermeil S-hook. For my project today, you're going to need some findings, okay? You're going to need some jump rings and some crimp tubes. You're going to need 6 of each. Okay, so crimp tubes are those. So I use 2mm by 2mm crimp tubes. Those are my favorite. They're the sturdiest, they hold the best, and they're not particularly expensive. Mine are, gold filled, because that is the strongest way to go. And honestly, yes, it's more expensive than base metal or plated ones, but the overall expenditure is not that much, and it makes for so much of a sturdier finish. And then I'm using 4mm 20 gauge jump rings. When you're using jump rings, you need to make sure that you're using a heavy enough jump ring to support whatever you're asking it to support. Now granted, this piece I'm making today is not that heavy, but still, I always try and use at least a 20 gauge jump ring if at all possible. And then of course, you're going to need some stringing cable. I'm using 0.014 49 strand stainless steel stringing cable. 49 strand is always going to be the highest quality stringing cable you can get, and that's what you want to get if at all possible, because it's going to give you the sturdiest final product. As far as tools, we're going to need pliers and wire cutters. I'm not actually going to need a round nose pliers for today, but I'm going to need 2 pairs of chain nose for my jump rings, and then a nice sharp wire cutter for my stringing cable and my chain. So I'm going to start by having a think for a moment and seeing what length do I want my necklace to be. And 3 strands, tiered or nested, meaning short, medium, long is what I'm going for. Since I'm using a fairly dainty chain, I think I'm going to go for 16, 17, and 18 inches. Okay, so now we got to math backwards, and we're going to start with the clasp. Okay, so I'm going to grab my ruler, and I'm going to measure my clasp, and I'm going to see how long is this clasp. And this clasp is, we're just going to call that, okay, it's really 5/8 of an inch, but I'm just going to call it a 1/2 inch because the math on that is easier. So I have a random, that's an order I need to fill, but I can use it as note paper on the back. Okay, so we want 16, 17, 18. All right, minus 1/2 inch is 15.5, 16.5, 17.5. Figure I'm going to do 1 inch of beads on each, so that takes me down to 14.5, 15.5, 16.5, and then figure you're going to get a 1/2 inch from your crimp beads and your stringing cable loops. So just to make the math easy, that's 14, 15, and 16. So what that number is that I just calculated is how much chain I need to cut for each strand. So just to kind of break that down for you one more time. So I had, and we're just going to do 1 strand. So let's say the top strand, I want it to be 16 inches. Okay, my clasp is going to add length. So I measure my clasp. We're calling my clasp a 1/2 inch. That means that whatever I do for the rest of my necklace plus my clasp is going to equal 16 inches. That means everything else has to be 15.5 total to account for the clasp. Then I'm going to put my beads in the middle. I'm going to do 1 inch of beads. So then that means I need to have, again, 16 inches total. Now we've got a 1/2 inch of clasp, 1 inch of beads, which means that we have 14.5 inches of whatever else is going to make our necklace. Then we've got jump rings in the back, we've got crimp beads in the front. I'm just going to round that off at a 1/2 inch. So that means that whatever needs to be the rest of my strand, anything that's not beads, crimp beads, jump rings, or the clasp, that total length needs to be 14 inches. And in this necklace, that's going to be my chain. It's going to be in 2 parts because my beads are going to be in the center. So that means I'm going to cut 2 7-inch pieces of my chain for my top strand. And try not to dump my clasp on the floor while I'm doing that. All right, so 7 inches. So 2 7-inch pieces. So that's my top strand, and I do want to make sure that I kind of keep these in order. When I was making my prototype, I got them a little mixed up. All right, so there's my top strand. I'm just going to put those up the top of my work surface. Okay, so now my second strand, 15 inches is what I need for the chain part. So that means 7.5 inches times 2. And then I'm sure everybody knows exactly where this is going. My next strand is 16 inches of chain, which means that I need, what has happened here? My chain has created a knot. So yeah, my next strand is 16 inches, which means I need 2 8-inch pieces. So once I successfully unknot my chain, you know what? Let's do this the easy way. Since this is a short spool, we'll just go from the other end. We'll deal with that knot after the stream. So is it 2 7.5-inch pieces? Followed by 2 8-inch pieces. inches, 1 and 2. All right, so that's all my chain cut. Set that aside. All right, so now I'm gonna grab and I'm gonna put the same amount of beads in each strand. Now you could definitely, okay, you were supposed to be 2 pieces of chain. Why are you not 2 pieces of chain? You're 1 piece of chain. There you are. Sometimes when you cut the chain, the link doesn't actually fall off, and so then you're like, but wait, I know I cut you. You're supposed to be 2 pieces, and yet you are not. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my stringing cable, and I'm just gonna cut myself off a solid, like a 12-inch piece. That should be enough to do all of my stringing. Oh, Lori always has to torture me with their good food. She's making carrot cake later today. Jelly. Oh no, wait, you made that yesterday, didn't you? Let's see, if I have the energy this weekend, I might make gluten-free Chex Mix. I'm very excited about that. Not because that's the limit of my cooking prowess, but because that's the limit of my cooking energy. Gluten-free Chex Mix and sangria. Because I have a bunch of bottles of red wine in my liquor cabinet that I am never going to drink, because I'm really not a red wine drinker, but I do love myself a good sangria. So I have a book club on Sunday, so I think Chex Mix and sangria is going to be my contribution to the snackies of the book club. Also, I do want to say, you know, compilation articles on Pinterest, sometimes goldmine, sometimes not so much. You know, I was looking for kind of a Halloween themed treat to bring to book club on Sunday, and so I clicked on, you know, 24 Halloween themed appetizers, and like they were all very fall themed, and some of them were quite good, like the sangria, which did turn out to be something I'm gonna bring. But I was looking for, like, you know, deviled eggs that look like eyeballs and like things, you know, kitschy things like that, and there were not. No. Ooh, ham and dressing, yum. I am definitely a little bit exhausted today, Amy, not gonna lie. That was a late night last night, faux show. Alright, so I've got my stringing cable. I mean, when Amy taps out before the end of the sale on purpose, you know it's a late night. But it was loads of fun. Alright, so I've got my stringing cable. This is 0.014 stringing cable. This is what we typically call fine stringing cable. This is what you're going to use for smaller beads. If you're using larger beads, then you can use a median cable, which would be like a 0.018. Heather is okay. We talked this morning. She's actually at home today. She's working on that giant flag project that's due next week. So I have spoken to her this morning. I can verify that she got home safe last night and that she is alive and awake, and is now buried in seed beads, making bead loom woven flags, because we have 50 of them that we still have to make by, oh, you know, next week. Heavy gauge cable, Lori, is 0.024 inches. I don't honestly know if it's measured the same in Canada as it is here, but typically they do have millimeter equivalents, so my guess is this is probably a universal label. So 0.024 inches is what the heavy gauge cable would be. So I'm going to take my cable and I'm going to take one of my crimp tubes, and again, this is a 2mm by 2mm gold filled crimp tube, and I'm going to drop that onto the end of my cable, and then I'm going to grab one of my pieces of chain, and I'm going to drop the end of that chain onto my cable as well. Now I'm going to take the end of this cable, I'm going to flip it back around, and I'm going to put it down through my crimp tube like so, so my cable's, well, shoot. That's not how that was supposed to go. I dropped the end, and now my crimp tube's on the floor, so let's try that again. Take 2. Crimp tube goes on the cable. Chain goes on. This is what I get for talking so much instead of just doing it. Chain goes on the cable, cable end goes back down through the crimp tube, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch those ends, lightly, and I'm going to pull that cable down through so I have a small loop. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, I'm going to smash that cable flat. Make sure you smash the whole thing. Give it a good tug to make sure that everything is stable. And then grab your wire cutters and you can clip that end off right next to your crimp bead. Now there are some people who prefer to string this end down through your beads. I'm not one of those people. The reason for that is that the cable will actually stretch over years of being worn, and eventually those ends that you, what did I do with my, oh, those ends that you strung down through your beads are going to wind up coming out and poking you in the neck. Alright, I'm going to measure off an inch of my tourmaline beads, and then I'm going to string those onto my cable. So this is the simple part of the procedure. And I decided to start on my long strand, so I'm currently using one of my 8-inch pieces of chain. It really doesn't matter which one you start on, as long as you remain consistent. So if you are, you know, using a 7-inch piece of chain, you need to use a 7-inch piece of chain on the other side of your bead grouping. Don't put, you know, an 8-inch piece of chain on one side and a 7-inch piece on the other. That will not work out in your favor. Alright, so I've got my 1 inch of tourmaline. Now I'm going to take another crimp tube, and I'm going to, again, string that onto my cable. I'm going to string my cable through my other piece of, again, these are my 8-inch pieces of chain, my longest pieces of chain. And you don't have to, you know, you don't have to use my lengths. You can absolutely, you know, jigger the lengths to be however you want them to be. So through the end of the chain, and then through the crimp tube. So I've created, again, a loop upon which this chain is hanging, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull on this tail, and what that's going to do is that's just going to pull everything down like so, and then I'm going to crimp that off, meaning I'm going to smash it flat, smash, and trim that off. There we go. So that is first section of my necklace. I'm going to set that aside. So that's my longest strand. So now I'm going to do my middle strand. So again, crimp tube goes on, cable goes on, maybe? There we go. Cable goes on. Cable goes through the chain. Take the end of the cable, flip it around, go back down through your crimp tube, like so. On this side, we're just going to pinch, and we're going to pull the long side to tighten that down. And then we're going to smash and trim, like so. Now I'm going to measure off another inch of tourmaline. Thanks, Amy. I don't know if we have another one of these strands or not. I was cleaning out my things to do bucket, which is scary at the best of times and is extra scary at the moment, and it was in the bottom. Okay, so 1 inch of beads going onto my cable, like so. Okay, so this is fun. This is sometimes something that happens. It's kind of like when your hair gets caught in the hinge of your glasses. If the chain's laying over your cutters when they get opened or closed, sometimes it gets caught in that little bit. Just be careful extricating it, because you can actually break it. Which, if you have plenty of extra chain, is not a big deal. If you don't have plenty of extra chain, is less fun. Okay, so that's my inch of chain. Now we're going to repeat. We need a crimp tube. We need our corresponding length of chain. So I'm at my 7.5s at this point. Like so. And then we're going to take our cable end, go back down through our crimp bead, like so, and then pull, 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 like so, and squeeze. Squeeze is a technical beading term. Now let's talk for just a second about chain nose pliers versus crimping tools for crimping crimp beads. I'm a huge fan of chain nose pliers for crimping crimp beads. That's when you just take your flat pliers that look like so, and you smash the crimp beads flat, flat, flat like that. Now, some people will argue that that's not very attractive, and I will grant you that when you're dealing with a small bead like this, it may be, I see that a case could be made for that. When you're using a bigger bead like this, it's not really noticeable to most people, myself included. Now, if you don't like the way that looks, you can always put a crimp cover over it. Of course, if you're smashing it flat, you need a 4mm crimp cover. But here's my problem with the crimping tools. The crimping tool is a fairly precise instrument that requires you to be able to see exactly what you're doing. And the problem I find with a lot of people to whom I'm teaching beading is they don't know where to look, they don't know what they're looking for when they're trying to use the crimping tool. And a lot of people who are self-taught, all of a sudden, where did that accent come from? A lot of people who are self-taught have no idea what they're looking for because they don't have anybody to tell them except possibly me on you know, on the interwebs or YouTube or something like that. But it requires a lot of precision in operating, and if you know how to operate it, you know what you're looking for, and you know how to use the tool, it's a great tool. The problem is if you don't. And the even worse problem is if you don't, but you think you do. And as a person who's done a lot of jewelry repairs over my career, I see a solid number of jewelry repairs that come in because the crimps at the end have just let go because they were never crimped properly in the first place, because whoever was using the crimping tool couldn't quite get the manipulations of the tool right in order to get the crimps secure. So I'm always a proponent of, you know, engineering is first. So it's got to stay together, and then you can work on making it look pretty. So if you're a beginner and you're having issues with the crimping tool, I highly recommend just grab yourself chain nose pliers and start smashing those crimp beads flat. Once you get the hang of that, then you can work on refining your crimping technique. Then you can work on crimp covers and things to make, you know, if your work is not aesthetically pleasing to you, you can work from that solid engineering base on ways to make your work more aesthetically pleasing to you. But and that's just my background. My grandfather was an engineer. My father, you know, has built things for as long as I can remember. So that's just where more my brain starts at, is it's got to function first, and then you can make it pretty, as opposed to making it pretty and then it doesn't function. So that was a little bit of a soapbox, but anyway, seriously, I am a huge fan of chain nose pliers over crimping tools for crimping crimp beads. Nothing against crimping tools, and if you know how to use it, good on you, have a good old time. But for all my beginners, when we teach beginners here at Beading Dreams, whenever we go back to in-person learning, that's how we teach, is just smashing flat with the chain nose pliers, just because it's a lot less moving parts and it's a lot easier to get the concept of how everything's supposed to work, you know, without adding that extra little monkey wrench in there. So speaking of crimping, I've got my cable, my crimp tube. Now I'm down to my 7-inch pieces of wire cable. Wire and cable are not the same. The terms are sometimes used interchangeably, but they're not actually the same thing. Cable is a bundle of wires, very teeny wires, that are all bundled together and usually coated in some kind of plasticine. This is nylon. Whereas wire is a single solid piece of metal that's drawn into a cylinder of varying sizes. I'm going to take the end of my cable, I'm going to flip it around, I'm going to go back down through that crimp bead, like so. And again, pinch those two ends gently and pull on the long end to shrink that loop. Smash that flat. Make sure you smash it completely flat. Okay, what you just saw me do is I kind of did a preliminary smash with the tip of my pliers while my finger was in there, and then I moved my finger once I had a little bit of a grip on with that crimp bead, and then I smashed it completely flat. 'Cause this is what is holding the whole thing together. Okay, it's important that it's actually secure. There we go. All right, 1 more inch of tourmaline onto this cable that I'm currently working with. string those babies on. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so Amy said she learned with the crimp tool and she agrees that chain nose pliers are equally effective and more efficient. Because it is, it's one motion instead of two. And again, your chances for inadvertent failure of your crimp beads is significantly less. All right, remember I dropped a crimp tube on the floor a minute ago? I gotta go get another one. Be right back. I got two just for good measure. Alright, so now we're going to crimp this onto our last piece of chain, which should be our remaining 7-inch piece of chain. So we're going to put the crimp tube on, grab my chain, go through the end of my chain like so, take my cable, flip it round, go back through my crimp tube, and pull it tight and smash. And trim. Okay, so there we go. So now we have 3 strands of beads inserted into chain like so. So if you don't like the look of those crimp tubes, you absolutely could put crimp covers over them. A crimp cover is just a little kind of C-shaped piece of metal. So if this is your crimp, it'll just go over your crimp. Obviously my hand's not quite big enough to accurately demonstrate this, but imagine this is extending all the way over here. Then you just squeeze it down. What it does is it covers your crimp tube and makes it look just like a little silver, gold, copper, whatever color your crimp tube is, just like a little bead at the end of your strand. Right, I just want to make sure that I have these in proper order, so I'm just going to look at, because that should be my short, this should be my medium, this should be my long, and I am correct. Go me. I kept things in order on minimal caffeine. It's a miracle. Alright, so now I've got 2 chain nose pliers. This is the most efficient way to open a jump ring, is to take 1 chain nose pliers and grab that jump ring right next to the opening. Okay, you can see it's got an opening right there. Take a 2nd chain nose pliers, grab on the other side of the opening, and you're going to twist. So one of my chain nose pliers is stationary, one is moving. You can move both of them, that's really up to you, but the important thing here is notice that one of my chain nose pliers is grabbing with the tip, and one is grabbing with the side, okay? Grabbing with the side gives you more leverage, it gives you more contact, but if you try and grab both with the sides, then you're like bashing your fingers, your hands together here, and it doesn't work so well. So usually my method of compromise is I'll take my stationary one, I'll grab with the side, so I get a solid amount of contact on pretty much half of that circle, and then I'll use the tip of the chain nose to move the other one. So I'm going to start with my long strand. I'm going to take the end of that chain, I'm going to drop that onto my jump ring, so make sure it's on there, and then I'm going to grab my clasp, and I'm going to drop my clasp onto my jump ring. Now since the ring on my clasp is thicker than my chain, looks like I need to open this just a little bit wider to get that clasp on there. Now, here's the trick, is I'm going to take this and I want to take my pliers and I want to make sure that I close this till I feel the 2 sides of that ring scrape against each other. So you want to close it so you can't see any light through that joint, and this is where most of the problems with jump ring operation arise, is that people don't close their jump rings properly. Okay, so really, like, get your magnifiers, get your lights, get you a webcam, like whatever you need to make sure that you can actually see what you're doing with those rings. That's important. Otherwise your pieces are not going to hold together if you're using jump rings, but it's not the jump ring's fault if it's user error. Alright, so there's my jump ring, and again, going to grab next to the opening, open that up. I'm going to do the other side now. So I'm on the same strand, okay, the same strand of my necklace. This is the longest one. I've got the end of my chain on my jump ring, and then I'm just going to bring around. This is an S-hook clasp. These are puzzling sometimes to people who aren't used to them, but usually when they're sold as a closed S with a ring on each side. This is the clasp complete. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to open up one side of my S, and that's going to be my actual functional clasp part. But this way you make sure that you get all three parts of your S clasp, otherwise the rings have a tendency to go astray. So I'm going to attach this jump ring onto my S clasp. Take two. I'm going to attach this jump ring onto my S clasp. There we go. And then I'm going to close it. Now, some of you may be wondering, hey, could I attach all three of these chains to this S clasp with a single jump ring? And the answer is, when you're using a chain this fine, yes, absolutely, 100% you could. The reason I'm going to do it with 3 jump rings today is, number 1, so I can harp on how to open and close a jump ring a little bit more. Number 2, if you are using a 3-strand clasp like I did on my prototype, then you do need to use a single jump ring for each chain. Alright, so numero dos. Alright, take your jump ring, open up. So when you're thinking about a multi-strand necklace, if you think about it as being on the back, okay, how my brain has to think about it, and my brain's not necessarily the same as everybody else's brain. If you think about it on the back of your neck as a vertical construction, okay, so imagine this is the necklace on the back of my neck. Okay, the top strand, the shortest strand, needs to be highest in that vertical construction. The medium strand needs to be next. The bottom strand needs to be the lowest. So that means if you're using a clasp like this that has 3 holes, that means that, you know, oh, well, assuming that you're holding it the correct way as for a right-handed person. Okay, so then this is the top strand. Middle strand is easy, it's the middle one, and then this is the bottom strand. But I always have to think about it as, okay, when I put it on the back of my neck, how's it gonna go? And some people's brains don't work in that complicated a fashion. They can just kind of figure it out, but that ain't me, folks, sorry. So I started at the bottom, so that means that my middle strand needs to go above that on the clasp. So we're long, middle, and then short. So middle strand is next. I've got my jump ring onto my chain. So above, on my clasp, above the one that I already put there, like so. And then once again, close your jump ring completely. No space. I'm going to grab my second jump ring. And hey, look, that one's already open, so that's handy. Sometimes they come that way. Sometimes I open them and throw them back in the jump ring drawer. So again, that one's going to go above the one that's already there. Like so. And then we're going to close that up. And last one, that's going to be my shortest one, so that's going to be the highest of all of them. So second to last jump ring. Of course you need 2 for each strand, so I started with 6. I managed not to drop any of these on the floor, which is amazing. I promise that's not like hair or anything gross on my pliers. There's from all my fabrication classes, there's random steel wool bits that just like live on my work surface, and then they just attach themselves to anything and everything, occasionally including my fingers. It's great. The joys of, the unsung joys of metal smithing, including but not limited to getting stabbed with steel wool, burning holes in your jeans with pieces of hot metal, torch burns, etc., etc. There's that. Staining clothes, cutting your finger with a saw, Let's see, what are some other unsung joys? And I say joys in the most sarcastic way possible. Anybody else out there have some unsung joys of metalsmithing they would like to share with us? I know most of my metalsmiths are probably going to be watching tonight, so I might bring that back up again on this evening's stream. But if anybody out there has any other crap that nobody tells you when you're like, I want to start to use torches and make silver jewelry, and it's going to be so much fun. And then you're like, oh crap, I don't have a single pair of jeans that doesn't have a tiny little hole in the thigh from where I dropped something on it that was hot. Yeah, I think I need to, I'll bring that up tonight and see what some of my Torchy Thursday people have to say, which does remind me that, hey, guess what? Tonight on the Beading Dream stream is Torch Thursday. We are doing a big-ass earring project just for Amy Annaby. Not just for Amy Annaby, but it's a project that I know she likes. Which is these are half moon, half star. I think I call them half moon earrings this time around. It's a project we've done before, and I've done it both as a necklace and an earring, but it's fun because it combines sheet metal with basic bezel setting, and there's just a massive amount of potential for different designs in this particular project. Okay, so alright, so this is something that happens, which is called, you know, physics. So this ring it's either that, okay, there are two things it could be, and honestly I can't tell which one it is, but either this soldered ring on this side of my S-hook is slightly smaller than this soldered ring, or this piece of my S-hook here is slightly bigger, but basically I don't really have enough space to fit this ring into here. So we're gonna do a workaround for that. I'm gonna go grab 2 more parts. I'll be right back. Well, she's fixing something that's not working, which requires more parts. Okay, so I've taken my soldered ring, or I'm going to take my soldered ring off of my S-hook. Okay, so now I have eliminated the problem of not having enough space, because now I have, hi Lee McGee, welcome to the stream. You're catching us at the end of our project today. We are almost done with our triple chain necklace, this guy here. I'm just doing a little and Seppi 550. Hi, both of y'all. Is this a raid, or y'all just very, yay, we do have a raid. Hi, raiders. Sorry, I didn't have my, that particular screen up. Welcome, raiders. We've got raiders on the Beading Dream stream. That's super exciting. So Lee McGee, thank you for raiding us. Whatever were y'all doing on your stream today? We are, like I said, we're at the end of this project. This is our triple chain necklace, and I'm just showing a little workaround because I ran into a little problem. Oh, Amy, those earrings are a saga. That's actually a pretty funny story that maybe I'll tell on this evening's stream. So yay, hi raiders, welcome to the Beading Dream stream. So I'm just in the process of putting the clasp on this necklace, which is 3 strands of chain with beads inserted in the middle, just on stringing cable. So the problem I ran into is my soldered ring on the second side of my S-hook clasp was not big enough to accommodate my 3 jump rings to attach my chain. So my workaround is going to be this. I've detached my soldered ring from my S-hook, okay? And that, even though that looks like a jump ring, it is actually a soldered ring. The solder joint on that one is just not so fantastic. I promise I didn't make that one. Also, hey Lee McGee and raiders, are any of you all metalsmiths or fabricators? We were just having a discussion about what are the unsung joys of metalsmithing, like staining your clothing, burning yourself with torches, stabbing yourself with steel wool, etc., etc. We were wondering if anybody had anything to add to that conversation of particularly annoying things that have happened to you that nobody told you about when you started on this particular pathway. Yay! Miss Boombox Brittany, awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Lee McGee, so much. So what were y'all making on your stream today? Are you a gamer, or are you also a makers and crafting stream? I mean, either way, welcome. We are so happy to have y'all here. So I'm going to take my last jump ring, and so I've detached this soldered ring from my clasp, and I'm going to go ahead and just pop that jump ring on there and close it up. And once again, make sure you close it all the way. Okay, no light showing through. No fingernails. Ha ha ha! See? Sage Juice Up Maine knows what's up. This is not limited to metal fabrication. This is also anybody who's ever burned their fingers with a glue gun. Yeah. Yes, this is what I'm talking about here. And stabbing and burning fingers with a soldering iron for electronic stuff. Also stained glass. Same. The smell of oxidizing silver with liver of sulfur. Yep, that's another thing. Thanks, Miss Boombox Brittany. I appreciate it. Okay, so now I've solved one problem here. I've solved the problem. Okay, well I've made a knot. I've made things have happened, and they happened without my consent. There we go. Okay, so now I've managed to connect all of this onto my soldered ring. Great, fabulous. Okay, but here's the problem. Now there's not enough room in the soldered ring for the clasp, because that was the whole problem in the first place. But there is enough room, I think, in this soldered ring for one more 4mm heavy jump ring. So my workaround is this. I've gotten myself another soldered ring and another 4mm jump ring. I'm going to attach that soldered ring onto that soldered ring that was original to my S hook, and then that hopefully will make me a functional necklace. So again, 2 pairs of chain nose pliers, twist it up. Though I will say, Amy, that if you're around liver of sulfur enough, you lose sensitivity to that particular bad smell. But there are plenty of other bad smells when you're fabricating jewelry. I'm just going to drop that soldered ring on there, and I'm going to close that up like so. And now, if all of my calculations are correct, I have, ta-da, a functional necklace. Yay! Alright, so that's our triple chain necklace. Thank y'all for hanging out on the Beading Dreams stream, especially our raiders, all of you new folks. So if anybody does want to see me play with torches and potentially set things on fire, tonight is our Torch Thursday stream. That's going to be back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time. Okay, it's usually about 6:15 p.m. Central Time, because that's how I roll. But yeah, oh yep, burn plastic. Oh, and then macrame artist, the smell of burning polycord. That's always a great one too. Yeah. We need to start making a list of this. We also do have a Discord, by the way. If anybody wants to continue this conversation in our Discord, I'm going to go ahead and put the link up there for you. There's lots of fun stuff in there. We're also pet people, recipe people, and cocktail people, so lots of fun stuff in our Discord. If anybody wants to join, we would love to have you. But yeah, if you want to see me play with actual, small, but actual torches and fire, that's tonight at 6:15 p.m. Central Time on the Beading Dreams stream. I'm going to be doing this project. It's a sheet metal and basic bezel setting project, a pair of earrings, or possibly a pendant, depends on the mood I'm in tonight, if I'm feeling earringy or if I'm feeling necklacey or how I'm feeling. But anyway, so thank you all so much to our new people. Thank you, Lee, for rating us. We really appreciate that. It's time for us to open the store now. We are, of course, an actual brick and mortar retail bead store. For anybody who didn't know that, we're here in Dallas, Texas on Lover's Lane, and we are open for business Monday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., which means it's time to swing wide the gates, let the people in, and feed their need to bead. But I will be back. Okay, camera, seriously, this camera has a problem with focusing on me. I don't like it. We'll be back on this channel, twitch.tv. Thanks, Amy. Twitch.tv/Beading Dream. Thanks, Miss Boombox Brittany. I love the reacts. They're great. All right, we'll be back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream tonight at 6:15 p.m. with our Torch Thursday class. Hope to see each and every one of you then. Also, all my new people, if you would be so kind, follow us on Twitch, follow us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, like us on Twitter. All those things help us out so much. Everyone have a great Thursday afternoon, and we'll see y'all back on the stream at 6 p.m.